Super Rugby round 10. Again, it's a pretty short round with only the 6 games. 3 on Friday, 3 on Saturday, with 3 teams on the bye. So, I guess a good mix. All New Zealand derby, all Australian derby, and then a Aussie visiting South Africa game. Still lots of pressure on, just given where we're at the comp. It's kind of getting to that do or die point for a lot of teams, and a few of those teams which should be pulling away haven't kind of managed to step up in recent weeks. So we'll see how the likes of the Rebels do in that regard. See if the Blues can get back on track and see if the Brumbies can kind of put things together. Stormers back at home. Lots of interesting stuff to play for. The first one, the Blues visiting the Highlanders. Traditionally, it's not been a match with much fun for the Blues, especially since the Highlanders moved to Forsyth Bar Stadium. The Blues are yet to taste victory down there. It is one of the few grounds that I've been to. I went there a few years ago when John Curlin was still in charge. I remember the Blues got a real hiding in the first half, managed to put on a bit of a show in the second half, but not enough to get a victory. And that's been the thing. With the Highlanders in recent years, they have just made themselves a really tough team to beat. Down there, it was a real pity that that game against the Crusaders was cancelled this year, because that would have been a cracking game, with the Crusaders being such a hard team to play and the Highlanders being such a hard team to beat at home. But it's not been a happy season thus far for the Highlanders. Just the 2 wins, the cancelled game, and 5 losses for the Blues, despite it being a 50-50 record of 4 wins and 4 losses. I think most of us Blues fans would probably say it's been a successful season so far, because they managed to beat the Highlanders when they were up here in Auckland. It's been a long time since that kind of thing's happened, and even a 50-50 record for the Blues in recent years has been pretty hard to come by. So they're still ahead of the likes of the Chiefs and the Highlanders on the table. For the Blues to be in 3rd place in New Zealand, it's been a long time. So whatever happens from here, I mean, it could kind of still spiral out of control and just all go to custard, but there's signs of the improve for sure. The opposite is true for the Highlanders. There are signs of kind of concerning areas, I guess, under Aaron Major. He's got a bit of pressure on him, and this is a key game for him and his boys to get a win, because a home loss to the Blues would really signal kind of an all-new low. For the lineups, there's a bit of good news for the Highlanders in that Aaron Smith is back on the bench. He was supposed to be out for, I think, 6 weeks, but he's come back earlier than expected for the bench. Hamilton still gets the start. Luke Whitelock was rested last week against the Crusaders. He is back on the bench, interestingly, not starting. Elliot Dixon's at 8. Lynch is at 7. Frizzell's at 6. So I think that's pretty much the same as last week. Theo Tompkinson is in because Rob Thompson has got some family stuff to deal with, so he is not available. But otherwise, it's a pretty stable lineup. Ben Smith still at the back. Faddis and Lee still on the wings. It's Lomax, Coltman, and Leonard Brown in the front row. Oh, Himopo is in. Paddy Parkinson's not playing this week, so for the most part, it's pretty stable. For the Blues, again, kind of minimal changes. Mafaleo comes in for Tuangafasi. They swap places from bench and starting, so that's it. It's the same team as last week. Still Oteri Black and Jonathan Ruru. Minai Nanai's at fullback. Caleb Clark, Rico Ioane. Ma'anonu, TJ Faiane. Papali'i, Tom Robinson. Man, it's just the same lineup. So consistency, I guess, being a key. For Leon McDonald, the team has been putting in a pretty good effort. So I guess if it ain't broke, why try and fix it? Because they did go close against the Chiefs in Hamilton last week, so they'll be hoping to go one better. Against the Highlanders, it is James Parsons' 100th game for the Blues, so they'll be looking to kind of celebrate that with a win for him. But as I said, they've never beaten the Highlanders down at Forsyth Bar. So it does look tricky. The bookies have got the Highlanders by 3 points, so just edging it as favourites, but nothing too startling in those odds there. The next one is an all-Aussie affair. The Waratahs up against the Rebels. It's kind of potentially a switching of the guard with the Waratahs having been the top Aussie team last season and the Rebels just missing out. There's a potential changing of the guard there. The Rebels have been the inform team for the Aussie Conference so far this season, but they've still had 3 losses, 2 away in South Africa and 1 at home to a South African team. So against everybody else, they seem to be okay. They just can't play the South African teams at the moment. In the Aussie Conference, they've been all conquering, so they will be looking to continue that. The Waratahs have been a right mixed bag. Losing to the Sunwolves, beating the Crusaders. I don't know what you say about the Waratahs this year. They are just a funny lot, but they could desperately use a win here at home because in that conference, it's kind of like a double. Like, not only do you stop the other team from winning, but you get a win yourself. So it's almost like a double points win if you can get one here. If the Rebels can deny the Waratahs, then they will be well on their way to streaking ahead in the Australian Conference. The Waratahs will be looking to peg them back. And I think the Reds and the Brumbies, Sunwolves equally, will all be looking for the Waratahs to do them a favour here and not let them get too far ahead in that conference. Of course, the Waratahs are dealing with the Israel Folau thing, so he is not in the squad. They have moved Kurtley Beale to fullback. Some people saying that's his best position because he gets all that bit of space. But the guy is not that good under the high ball, so I would expect him to get a bit of targeting there. But that being said, these guys in that Waratahs team can kind of shuffle around a bit with Carmichael Hunt, Adam Ashley Cooper, even Bernard Foley. These guys are all pretty flexible in what positions they can play, so it wouldn't be surprising to see some other guys drop back to fullback at times and for Kurtley Beale to come in, maybe the first receiver or into the midfield. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. They're coming off a bye, so they should be well rested, and with the Folau saga having gone on for a while, hopefully they've been practicing basically what to do when he's not there. Also, Ned Hannigan is injured, so he is not available. The forwards is like Holloway, Simmons in the second row, and then Dempsey, Hooper, and Wells in the back row, so plenty of mobility there. For the Rebels, Vessels has kind of swung the axe a wee bit for that team which was so disappointing against the Stormers, although having Gibbon, Rangi and Ainsley back in the front row is potentially a bit of a boost. Phillip is also back, so he partners Coleman in the second row. Hardwick is there in the back row alongside Jones and Nasirani. Jack Maddox is back from injury, so he takes his place on the right wing. Still Reece Hodge at fullback, Quade Cooper, Guinea, Korobidi, Billy Meeks, Tom English, all those guys are still there. There's still no Dane Hallett-Petty, which is kind of disappointing. That would have been an interesting one if it had been Dane Hallett-Petty playing, because they could have used his aerial prowess to target perhaps a bit of weakness there in the Waratahs, but not to be. Yeah, I don't know how to call this one, and the bookies don't either. It's evens, so I guess the Rebels have been the stronger team, but they are away. Not that the Waratahs really have a true home this season, so it is a tricky one to call. But I would say the Waratahs need the win more than the Rebels. The Rebels, if they can get a victory here, as I said, not only does it give them another win, it denies the Waratahs, so it puts some touching distance between them. If the Reds go on to lose, as they are predicted to do, and the Brumbies go on to lose, then, and Sunwolves as well, then the Rebels are really giving themselves some daylight in that Aussie Conference, which is, I guess the Crusaders are doing it in New Zealand, the Rebels are potentially doing it in Australia, then it's just for the South African Conference to decide who is going to be that number one team. The last one, Stormers hosting the Brumbies, two teams who have been poor of late, but in the most recent week both bounced back with a win. So the Brumbies got a pretty good victory, and it was, I guess, a little bit unexpected and pretty comfortable in the end. The Stormers, who would have thought they would have got a win away, especially against the Rebels, who've been in good form. So both teams perhaps turning the corner, and then one of them is going to go straight back down. So who that is definitely a big question. I would say, depending on how that Rebels game goes, the Brumbies could probably use the win more, just because if the Rebels get a win, they're really pulling away. If the Waratahs get a win, then the Brumbies are kind of equally as far away as they are at the moment. But either way, for them, a win is pretty important. The South African Conference, like, is it pretty much all the teams are 4 wins and 4 losses? They're all really a mixed bag, so flip a coin and see how this one's going to go, because I'm not sure. I would have thought the Brumbies away from home would be definitely a big target for the Stormers to get a win, but the Stormers away from home to the Rebels would have been a big target for the Rebels last week, and that didn't happen. So you do not know this season with Super Rugby. It is really, really tricky to pick. I think Stormers fans may be slightly happy in the lineups because Josh Stander, who a lot of people seem to rate, is getting a start at number 10. Jean-Luc Duplessis is being rested. Who else is in? Peter Steph-Tutoy is back, which is good news. Dan Creel is also in at 12 because Damien Delende is also being rested. Cobus van Dijk is there. And I think for the most part, otherwise, it's a pretty stable lineup. Sanatla is there on the bench. Khaleesi is also on the bench. Kitshoff still captains from Loosehead. Still no Etzebeth. But they won without all their big guns last week, so we'll see if no Etzebeth, Khaleesi on the bench, etc. Damon Delende being rested, see if that kind of makes a difference to them. For the Brumbies, they have only made one real change with Jerome Brown coming in at number 7. But that's shuffled things around in the back row. So Samu moves to 8 from 6. Cusack moves to 6 from 7. And Lachlan McCaffrey, who was outstanding last week, he's not in the squad. I did read that he's just out of the squad rather than injured, but maybe that news didn't filter through. I would imagine he has to be injured to not be playing. Otherwise, that's just a really interesting selection. The guy does seem to go down hurt a fair bit. Like, he puts himself in some pretty tricky situations and gets involved in a bit of pain. But he's just been so good this season, it seems unusual that he would not be playing if he's fit. But otherwise, Sio, Fainga, Alalatoa, Rory Arnold, Sam Carter, pretty much all Wallabies there in the type 5. Joe Powell, Christian Lealefano, again, Wallabies all about. Spade, Kurandrani, Tom Banks. It's a lot of Wallabies looking to impress in a World Cup year, so see if they're able to kind of back up after last week. Both these teams are really still flip of a coin teams, honestly, because, I would have thought Stormers at home. Stormers traditionally were stronger at home last year than they were away because they didn't win any away games, so perhaps that gives them an advantage. The travel factor is not really going to be a factor because both have had to travel over from Australia, so it's kind of an even situation for both of them there. But, either way, it should be a good game. The Stormers by 7 is what the bookies have got, so relatively comfortable in terms of that prediction. But, not taking anything for granted in Super Rugby this season, apart from the fact that the Crusaders are probably going to be pretty good, unless they're not for 40 minutes. You guys let me know your thoughts on these games. How do you think they're going to go? And I will talk to you again soon. See you later.